So we're moving into our last professional development workshop, and then afterwards we'll have our United Way meeting. So I'm thrilled to introduce Tracy Gibbons Hunter. She is the Director of Public Policy and Education Fund of New York Navigator Program. She's an active practitioner of restorative justice practices and circle keeping with Dutchess County Mediation Center and Westchester Restorative Justice Center. Tracy has over 20 years experience as an activist and organizer regarding racial justice, women's rights, criminal justice, people's survival, institute survival, and beyond human rights. Tracy has given presentations, mediated, and helped training to private organizations and school districts. So we're really thrilled to welcome her today. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's been a long morning. Try not to keep you too long, but it's definitely should help us be engaged. So it's the name is anti-racism. What's that? And the reason why I asked that question is because it seems to be coming up a lot and people are not familiar with this. They're like, what is this about? What is this? You know, I thought I was woke and I'm not woke, and you know, all these new terms people are hearing, and we're like, what is going on? So the world is changing. There's some things that are changing for the better, as we know, and then, you know, with change, things can change and for the worst. So we have to keep our eye out, right? And what's good for one may not necessarily be good for the other. So anti-racism, let's first talk about, you know, the definition. So I want to talk about race so that we understand how race started in America. So in 1640, there were three men who were indentured services. Two were white, one was black. And all three of them decided, hey, the American Indian, the indigenous people, are running away from this service because it's brutal and they're not coming back. Let's try it for ourselves. So the three of them decided to go off. And so they did, but they got captured in a few days. Upon their return, all three of them were punished. The two white men were given 40 lashes, and they had an additional 4 years added to their 7 years of indentured service. But John Punch, who was the black man, was told that he was going to get the 40 lashes, and instead of an additional 40 years of indentured service, he got a lifetime of service. So that was the first time that race was caused to affect someone based on their color. Then in 1662, the law came out that said, whether a woman is bonded or free, her child will follow her condition. So by then we knew that Blacks had been brought to the United States, and Black women, if they were slaves, their child now became slaves for a lifetime. And then in 1669, if a slave resisted their master punished them and ultimately killed them, well, then that was not a felony. And then, of course, in 1857, we had the Dred Scott decision. And that decision said that Blacks are not citizens of the United States. So this is how race started here in the United States. Any questions? Let me check where is the chat?
Not so far, Tracy. I'm happy to kind of let you know as they come up, every couple slides or what have you.
Okay, great.
And we did have a request. I don't know if it's possible to do from slideshow to see, we'll be able to see that slide, but if not, no worries.
I think slideshow. I don't want to to do a custom.
Present, go to present.
You go from current slide should be good.
Present.
No, click on from current slide.
Oh,
Cancel
I'm
it.
sorry. So
Back to where you
slideshow.
Mhm.
And then you want me to do, where is that?
from current slide to the left.
To the left.
One more over.
One more left.
More,
Oh, I'm sorry. It's your right. It's our left.
It's the right. Okay. Current slide. Okay.
Yes, yeah, perfect. Thank
All
you.
right. There
Sorry.
we go. Okay. All right. All right. Okay, so that's just a little history. You guys should know that there were laws that go on and go on and go on, and they still go on to this date. So these are some questions I'd like you guys to answer. Does racism exist? Does racist exist? And do you believe racism is hurting our country? Okay, you want to end the poll? Anybody need any last minutes? Okay, so out of the number of people who took the poll, 100% said racism does exist. And then it says, and they said 100% racism exists. And we had just 1% of the people who took it who said they don't believe that racism hurts our country. Okay, I'm gonna close this down. Thank you, everybody. So that gives me an idea where we're at, how people are feeling about race and racism. And it's important so that we can then talk about how we're gonna get to anti-racism. So race is a lie. We are humans, and our race should not matter. But we know that race was created by the Europeans, and they created it because of power. They wanted to establish privilege and power. And along with that, they wanted to establish and have control of the labor. We know that race is just a lie, simply because when you cut, no matter what color you are, blood comes out. We all need a heart for our heart to beat. We all need our brain for our brains to function. And that's in all of us. And prejudice. So prejudice is an option. It's an opinion. I'm sorry. It's an opinion that one has of something that they perceive as an idea. And yes, everyone can have a prejudice. So the definition of racism is racial prejudice plus power. And so racism is such an attitude and action that's supported by power of the law. So let's go back to John Punch. John Punch was punished because of his race, it was the white man's prejudice of his race, and it was the control of the law that gave them the power to do the punishment that they gave him. So the breakdown of anti-racism. So let's look at that. Anti pretty much means against. It means you're against something, right? You're against a policy, you're against a belief, a theory, party, or a practice. That's what anti means. So race, we just gave the definition of race. So that would mean that if a person is against anti-racism, then therefore they're saying, I don't believe in that lie that is being told about race. And the ism, as we know, is a suffix that is added to the end of other words. So can anyone or people want to put in the chat any other anti words or definitions or philosophies that they've heard or know of? Anti-fascism, that's right. Anti-Semitism, I love that. Yeah, that's anti-war. Yes. Anti-war. Yes. So we understand the anti part. You have the definition of racism. And so now the question is going to be, are you anti-racism or anti-racist, right? So that's going to be the next thing that we go over. But I just wanted to make sure everybody is comfortable with the definition that I gave of racism, and is everybody comfortable with the breakdown of the word of anti-racism? So is there anything anybody wants to share or concerns or something that they feel they want to talk about? Anti-establishment, yeah. Anti-social, yeah, anti-socialism, anti-Christ, heard that before. So another poll question is going to come up, and that is white supremacy about power?
And Tracy, all three are coming up, the next three, just so you know.
Okay. So there was 3 other questions, and it is just talking about poverty enough to address racism, and is white privilege about access to money? So we're at 61% of people voting. I'm just waiting to see if there's going to be more people are going to vote, or if we're at the end.
The poll isn't showing up for a lot of people, I don't think. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
It should be. We're not sure why that's not the case. If you're not seeing the poll for some reason, please just answer in the chat box, and we're sorry for the technical difficulties on our end.
Yeah, and we could just put your comments if you want. So we'll give you guys maybe one more minute for those of you who have access to vote to vote.
Oh, and somebody just commented, if you're using Zoom through a browser and not the app, the polls might not show up. So that might be the issue. So again, please just feel free to utilize the chat box.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess can they still answer those questions, or is it done? It stops, or how does it happen, Melissa?
Just let me
Emily?
know when you want me to close it, Tracy.
Oh, okay. I guess you can close it. So is there, thanks for the results. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So is white supremacy about power? It's absolutely about power. We saw that this month, in the beginning of this year. It is about power. It is about control. And it happens to be about white supremacy, wanting power. It's something that they've always had and want to maintain from the existence of this country. So remember, there were Europeans, mainly from England, who were rich, and they funded the servants to come to America and work the land. It began with tobacco, believe it or not with cotton. It originally started with tobacco and rice. And they used the indigenous people that were here. They used slaves, and they used servants that they would pay them for 7 years. And then after their 7 years, they were supposed to get a gun and land to till their own and, support themselves. But that was supported by rich white men from Europe. And they wanted to maintain that power. And in order to maintain that power, they could not let any other race come in and be a part of it. So it is about white supremacy. It is about control. So for some people, I think it was 5% said white supremacy is not about power. That's a conversation you need to have with a broader group to understand why you feel that that's not the case. And I'm not saying that it's 100% not, but I am going to say that history shows us that white supremacy is about power. And even if you look it up, the definition, it is about power. Okay, and so then question number 2 is just talking about poverty enough to address racism? And I think we had like 2% said yes, and 99% said no. So a little bit about this poverty. Whenever I have this conversation, not all the time, but majority of the time we talk, people want to bring in poverty. They want to say, oh, the reason why things are so bad is because people, are poor. Yes. Yes, people are poor. There are a lot of people poor and starving. We see it on TV all the time. Oh, donate to this organization, donate to that organization. And they always show you this little skinny child that's starving, and they tear at your heart, right? But what we also know is that because poverty does not always mean racism. And here's why. Because the color of your skin gives you an advantage that poor people and indigenous people do not have. I remember hearing Oprah say that she went to a country overseas, and she was trying to buy a pocketbook, and the woman looked at her and said, "You can't afford this pocketbook." Not knowing that she was talking to Oprah Winfrey, right? One of the richest women, or richest Black women, however you want to put it. And she's telling her, you can't afford it. So we know that when they look at people, the first thing you see is the person's color, whether they took a tan or used some type of cream to change their color or not. People do look at your color. They look at your facial features. They make stereotypes of you automatically. So it's I don't want people to feel sad or feel like, oh, I'm so sorry this is happening. I want you to say to yourself, I do have this privilege of my skin being white, and I am getting some advantage because of my white skin. And I am going to do everything in my power to make sure that all of us are treated equally. And that's the part about white privilege. So there was a trick question between 2 and 3. I don't know if some people, really caught on to it, but this whole thing about racism, white privilege, they go together along with the poverty. So I just want to know, is there any questions or people want to add stuff that maybe they want me to talk about in?
Do all the questions need to go in the chat, or can we just unmute? I apologize for muting.
Oh, well, you already unmuted, so go ahead. Tell me what your question is.
A comment. I have to say, as an African American man, and I've learned lately, especially at our organization, the Osborne Association, and we look at our upper leadership, that is pretty much all white women, and the leadership has done so much good work with talking about racism recently. And one of the things that when we hear the words white privilege, to hear the group of white women that acknowledge there has been a privilege in being white is something that I had to embrace, take in, and just respect, and really begin to look closer at. They wasn't saying it, of course, as boasting, but that is just a fact. And for me, I admire those who are brave enough to step up and say, you know what, white privilege does exist. So I appreciate the question and just being able to have this platform to discuss this. So thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. I have to agree with you. A quick story about me. I was in the corporate world, and I always tell people, when I was coming up, I became assimilated into the white world. At least I thought I was. I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. I was getting promoted. I was, being told I'm doing a good job. I'm working with all of these Fortune 500 companies. And then I found out that I was not getting paid as much as my white counterparts. I'm like, so why is that? You know, why are people asking me to be a part of this and to be on their team and I'm not getting paid for it? And that was because I was so into being assimilated into that white world, to trying to be accepted, to accepting this thing about, oh, it's not about color. And it is about color, because I had all the credentials. I had more credentials. A matter of fact, I got promoted and I had PhDs, people working for me. We were putting in all this fiber optic that you guys are using right now. That's what we were doing. And I was a project manager for many of them, for many of the Fortune 500 companies, but I wasn't getting compensated for the hard work that I was doing. So 2 friends of mine had me take the People's Institute Survival and Beyond Undoing Racism workshop. And I went home crying that day. I went home crying because that's when I realized that I was trying to play a game that I was never going to win. Absolutely never going to win. It didn't matter what I did or how hard I did it or what I did. It just wasn't going to happen. And yes, I became the rebel. I became the Black troublemaker. And sure enough, Tracy, you got to go. But that was okay, because it was time for me to go. It was time for me to realize that I had no reason to be there anymore, because my effort to assimilate into their world was never going to be. I had to accept that and I had to move on. Did it mean a pay cut? Absolutely. No longer a 6-figure pay cut. No longer a corporate credit card. But those things were stressing me to no end to have them, because it didn't really mean anything. So is there anyone else that's sharing anything? I see 4 new ones. Okay. It's always about color. As a person of a color, you have to work twice as hard and less pay. And what did that one say? I can't see it. Oh, there it is. Assimilation does not value the uniqueness of the individual. That's right. That's right. I'm pretty sure a lot of you've heard these conversations and these new titles that they're giving people called diversity, inclusion, and equity. So they're just all over there. I just remember when I was in the corporate world, they had this group and it was called diversity. And Ms. Baker talked about that a little bit, right? Like it's not that if you're going to pick, you're trying to get diversity, make sure you're picking somebody who's also going to bring something to the table, not just picking diversity for the sake of picking diversity. I appreciated her saying that very much. And then she also talked about having this on board. So I'm going to put the on board with the inclusion. Are you including these people? Are you just inviting them to the party, but you're not inviting them to dance? You're not listening to them. You're not asking them to participate. You're not asking them how they can participate. So I'm really concerned about all these new titles, even though I have one. It's called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director. So I really have to make sure that if I'm taking on this responsibility, that I'm making sure that there is some diversity, that there is equity, and that there is inclusion, because we really need to make sure that we're including people that we're inviting into the field. I think Jacqueline Hernandez, she raised her hand. Jacqueline, did you want to come off of mute and say something?
Yes, first I want to thank you for addressing this issue. I think obviously with everything that's happened over the past year, our nation's been polarized when it comes to race issues in such a way that we absolutely need healing from a lot of what has happened. And hopefully, as community advocates, that we can be that light to continue to push people to, it's kind of like what Babette said, pushing people, being the light in the darkness. So we continue those efforts. I just find it very interesting that you're discussing this. I was invited to become a member of a new foundation in Hudson Valley. Well, it's an existing foundation. I was voted in to be a member. And this morning, right before this meeting, which is why I was rushing from one to the other, I was on their first meeting of the year, and they discussed this particular topic, the diversity, the group, exactly what you termed it. It was the first time I had heard about it, not the first time I had experience with it. I remember being a student at Colgate University, and this was during a time when they had initiatives to provide students that academically did well, but just didn't have the financial ability to attend an Ivy League school. They provided the HEOP and EOP program. And I recall back then when I was a student that benefited from the EOP program, which is economic opportunity program. It provided students that did well in school just with the opportunity. And it was basically saying, if you gave minority students the ability to have the financial resources to attend the school, that they would perform the same way that their white counterparts would. And I remember it was just Colgate had embraced the program because there was financial incentives that they received. But it was the students that attended this program was really just thrown into the program. There was no transition for it. And we were confronted with tons of animosity, because the belief is, you really don't deserve to be here. You're only here because this federal program is pushing for you to be here. And in all reality, you didn't have the money to come here. You really shouldn't be here. And that was like a form of ignorance. So when I think about these new programs that are coming out of this cry for justice, I can't stop but think of that experience I had, in that, you come out and you say, okay, we got to make a change, we got to do something, but there needs to be education as to, and conversations across the tables, where people are talking about the hurt that they've experienced, and that acknowledgement that just because my skin is light doesn't mean that I'm a racist, and just because my skin is dark doesn't mean that I'm entitled. That there's real conversation across the table. And I think you talking about this and your experience in the corporate world, I've seen it also. Procter & Gamble, case in point, they had very few minority scientists in that. And the one scientist that was there, she advocated for a program for students, minority students, to get into the program, because she noticed that all the internships only went to Caucasians and it didn't go to any of them. And she said, I can't believe that there are no minority students that fit this tab. And so they allowed her to do the program. And out of that program, I was one of the students that was able to do it. There was probably about 5 of us that became doctors. So, it really made a difference and an impact to have mentors in those positions for the younger people coming up, but to also have people there holding that spot and saying, like you said, you may have been what they considered a token, but you being a token, you opened a door to exposure, to have those conversations, to allow other people to get into that position. So I thank you for doing that, even though I know that was a painful experience. But I think, it is part of the education process. At Colgate, I had tons of debates with students who felt like I took their best friend's spot. And I had to have those conversations with them as to why I believe I deserve to be there. So if we're not there at the table, how can we possibly advocate for true education and elimination of ignorance? Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I appreciate that. And you're right. You want diverse people at the table, but you want them to be heard, right? They have to be heard, when they're at the table. Otherwise, they're just on the menu and people are going to either eat them up, especially if they're outnumbered. And I can tell you that from experience. you eventually, they take full advantage of you and then move you on because you don't have what they call allies. And it's, so that's the important thing about these new phrases, is to have the conversations about them. So somebody wrote here that organizations have expressed equity statements posted on their website. So I love to read organizations' websites when they're posting about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I love to read them. But when you ask them if they're doing it, they don't have an answer for you. So all these corporations and businesses, oh yes, Black lives, oh yes, we're gonna hire this person, we're gonna do that. And the question is, how long is this gonna last? And that is my concern. How long is it gonna last? And are you really going to make sure that you are doing the definition of what you've posted on your website? Because it's not necessarily equity, is not necessarily money, right? It's different things when it comes to equity. And I just wanted to put that out there, that if your organization is talking about these things, that they really need to talk about it, and they need to figure out how they're going to hold themselves accountable. It's okay to put it on a website, but if you're not holding yourself accountable, that you're meeting, what you need to do, then it's just a statement and it doesn't really mean anything. And your employees look at that, right? They go, oh yeah, we made this big statement. In the meantime, we're still doing the same thing we were doing before.
Can I say something?
Someone wrote, great conversation, promote diversity, should have diversity reflected in their staff and board. I'm all for diversity, but I will tell you that I'm more about inclusion than this absolute need for diversity. And I will tell you that I remember working with the school and they were like, well, we can't find any Black teachers that want to come. It's like, oh, come on. All these Black kids going to college, you can't find one? You can't find one? Let's rethink that. How hard are you really looking for that person?
Hello? Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Somebody wanted to say something. Is that you, Bob? You wanted to share something?
No, this is actually, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know who you was talking to, I'm sorry.
No.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Okay, yeah, my camera's terrible. But you said something that was really important also, besides a lot of the other things that you said. You said about being outnumbered. So you can have all the ideas you want, you can do all this diversity, inclusion, and whatever the case may be, but you have 20 white board members, 1 Latino, and 1 African American, and maybe somebody else. You really don't feel like what you bring to the table is really much of nothing. But then on the lower level of it, when you're in quote unquote management, especially around this time, you feel like and I've had these conversations where some people have gotten hired at their jobs through the Black Lives Matter movement and don't want to rock the boat and say too much of anything because they were hired. It's a rarity that you get put in a position like this and you don't want to, little things that you probably would talk about, you really don't want to talk about because, again, you just want to keep your job. You don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to be looked at as, listen, I gave you your opportunity. Don't start looking crazy. Don't start acting crazy. Don't start trying to switch stuff around and move things, So there is that dynamic of strength in numbers. When you don't have that strength in numbers, it kind of debilitates how much you really want to go further with what you feel, what you have to say about your organization or anything like that. So, my organization knows I don't care. So I'm never going to be unprofessional and callous, but I'm going to say how I feel in a respectful manner. You just have to just deal with it. But a lot of other individuals will hold a lot of things inside and things that can actually ruin a program or an organization
because they just want to keep their job because of the race they are and that the position that they're in.
So Curtis, I would agree with you 100%. And I would tell you, back in the day, I was probably one of those people. I don't know if you guys remember, I told you after I took the Undoing Racism workshop, I came home and I literally got in the bed and cried. And that's because after that workshop, I learned I had to look myself in the mirror and say, Tracy, you're part of this. And how are you going to no longer be a part of this? And they will tell you in the workshop, don't go out there thinking you're going to change this all by yourself, because they will get rid of you. They will move you along. If there's a union, they will take you out of the union and give you a management job, because now they really have control over you, right? So it is. It's hard for people because you want to advance, you want to do good, you know, you want to get your raise, you want to get your accolades, but you also want to be true to yourself and to your people and to the country. And people can make it very, very difficult. I know Blacks people have this code that we have to use, where you talk a different language when you're around your people than when you're with your corporate world or your business world. I remember when I first started, I used to be designing the phone lines, and I would be talking to Verizon and Southwest, and we would be talking about the design and where we're going to meet, how we're going to meet. And one day I went out there to meet them in person, and every last one of them said to me, Tracy, I never thought you were Black. You sound so white on the phone. So I'm sure some of you have gotten those comments, but that happens. It happens to me even till this day. I don't take it bad anymore, but yes, there is code switching. And let me tell you, it hasn't gone away. It's been around for a long, long time. So is there anybody else who wants to add anything? I mean, I think it's really important that we have this back and forth.
Yeah, Tracy, I wanted to say that at our organization, I'm with Hudson Valley Community Services, and one of our primary functions is working with people with HIV and AIDS. And we found that the executive director asked us to form a Black Lives Matter committee to really address the Black Lives Matter issues, as well as diversity. And during the committee, we felt that it was more important not to have anything put on our website. It was more important to address what was going on internally within the agency itself, whether there was internal racism, internalized racism, and in working with our staff and surveying our staff, we found some of the areas that were of the most importance. And we addressed those both in policy and then also in forms that we use when we're meeting with our clients, because a lot of the problems that we were having was racism coming from our clients against members of our organization. So we started to address those, and they've all been put on paper. So every client that comes into our office understands what our values are and how we value diversity and how we will not tolerate language that is offensive. We know that we cannot change their thinking, but their thinking has no place within our agency if it does not respect and value individuals, especially individuals who are perceived as being disadvantaged, whether they are or are not. So we've had African American clients that refuse to work with an African American person because their own internalized feelings was that they weren't going to get the service that they deserved. So we tried to address those issues first. And we believe that if we do the inside job, that it should be able to reflect out.
Thank you, Bob. So I just want to address something that you said. Are you done?
Yes.
Okay, could just mute yourself. Jeffrey, you could unmute, and I just want to say something before you talk. Bob mentioned internalized. So there's internalized oppression, right? And so people of color and Black people, we tend to put ourselves down. We tend to question the other Black person across us. And that's because of the oppression that we've been so assimilated and socialized to believe that this Black person cannot help me. I need the white guy because he's the one, or the white woman. They're the ones that have the power to get what I need. Or we say to ourselves, I'm not good enough for this job. I'm not going to make it. I can't do it. So we are constantly questioning ourselves and questioning the color. So you're right, Bob. There is this thing called internalized oppression, and it's called racial oppression, and Black people definitely have it. And hopefully there's some group out there, and I've always wanted to do this, where Black people get together and talk about our oppressions and how we want to address those. So Jeffrey, you went in the chat, told me you had a question, and somebody else wants to talk about colorism, which I'm okay with. Jeffrey, can you unmute yourself? I don't see you. Maybe I should, there you go.
I'm unmuted, yeah. I don't have a question, I want to make a statement.
Yes, please.
Okay, so as I listened to Jacqueline speak, she struck a chord within me, because I previously worked for an organization where the leadership of the organization supported you furthering your education. They promoted you climbing higher in the ranks. And so I was enrolled in a program for that. But then what happened, that leadership changed. And the vision of the prior leadership was no longer the vision of the current leadership. And so there were several African-American males who at this time had received their doctorates, and they were never allowed to advance in this organization. You know, there were many others who were not African-Americans, who did not have their doctorates, who were advanced in this organization. And, you know, it just said to me, you know, what a shame that people can be so, how can I say, so Black people have to work so much harder, if you will, to receive or to reach the same levels as our counterparts. You know, and it was a bad example to me for those who are coming behind us. Gave them the feeling of, well, if they have reached this level of achievement in education and they can't, you know, receive these positions, then what about me? You know, what hope do I have? You know, I mean, I've since left that organization, but I talk to people from time to time, and it's the same type of thing. So my initial point was, as long as the leadership is promoting it, you know, then you can advance. But if that leadership changes or doesn't promote that, then, you know, no matter how much education you have or no matter how hard you work, you're not going to be promoted. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Absolutely. That's out there. That's out here today. So there was somebody who they mentioned colorism. And I wonder if that person wants to unmute and speak about it, or do they want me to speak about it?
Hi, Tracy. This is Kadia speaking.
Hi.
The colorism. I just thought of what Bob was saying about the Black person that didn't want a Black staff member at his organization to help the other. And it just made me think of colorism and how, You know, it's just, it is a problem in our community. And then you had mentioned getting a group of Black people together to talk about our oppressions, because that's where colorism really stems from. And I just think that overall the conversation is really great, and it's great that the United Way has brought us all together. But we don't have to be the only ones having the conversation here, but it's just so much information, and the work has to continue even after this meeting. But I just want to thank you. And if you want to elaborate on colorism, I don't have an expert's feel. I just figured, you know, since we are talking about anti-racism, that is part of it as well. But thank you so much for everything you're sharing today.
So I would tell you that I am not an expert in any way or form, people. Please don't think I'm an expert. I'm not comfortable with this whole thing about experts. I really, you know, I do have a problem with it. You know, if you want, you know, you read the books, I guess those are the experts. I don't consider myself an expert. I would consider myself a person who has lived in the life of a Black woman in a corporate world, in a non-for-profit world, right? In the unemployed world, and has experienced all these things and have conversations with other people about these things, and find it truly interesting how history and people's experiences can educate you so much if you just open your ears and your eyes to it. So the thing I would say about colorism is it's always been. Now, some of us will remember Spike Lee did a movie, I think it was called School Days. And in that movie, the theme was colorism. It was about the colorism amongst Black people, because we are not all the same color. We do not all come from the same place, but we have, unfortunately, been trained and taught and observed and absorbed what white society has taught us, that based on your color matters, where it shouldn't. But the darker you are, the more fearful they are of you. The better your hair is, oh, maybe you're the one, right? So those things that I just wanted to bring up, that I don't want anybody to walk away today feeling bad. So please don't do that. That's not going to help anyone walking away feeling bad. Just take this knowledge and hold on to it. And when you need it, use it. That's what this is supposed to be about. I've seen Black oppression. What is it called? Black oppression. I don't know, you oppress Black people. There's this new thing that they called anti-Blackness. So CCM put that down there. So Black oppression. Yes, there is such a thing as called the Black oppression. And I could tell you another story about that, but I won't. I will just tell you that it is such a thing that Jade has a question. Where are you, Jade? Jade, there you go. You got your hand up. Sorry.
No problem. I'm actually a new DEI intern for United Way at the Dutchess Orange region. And I just had the question of how to enter this space, because it is a new committee that has joined, and I'm grateful to be there, but I feel like I don't know, it's a weird position to be an intern and then getting into like the entry level position of it. So when the committee is new and the group might not be that diverse, but they are trying, how can I find my footing and, I guess, in some ways lead the conversation?
So recently, the NYCLU asked me to be the director, New York State Civil Liberties Union asked me to be the director on the board for their DEI. And at first I was like, I'm not the person for this. But then I decided, maybe I am the person for this. Yeah, I'm gonna do this, right? And I'm gonna challenge myself. And guess what? When I challenge myself, I'm gonna challenge them. But it did mean that I had to reach out to other people that were doing the same thing and find out what were they doing. And how were they going about it? And how was the board taking it? So Jada, I would say, I'm sorry, Jade, I would say if you don't have anyone to talk to about it, then please reach out to me. Let's have that conversation, right? To put you on footing and that you can hear what others are doing. Because I'm also on these calls with the ACLU, which is the American Civil Liberties Group, and they have all the DEIs from around the state that come on, and those are the conversation. You might have to read some books, you might have to watch some movies, you might have to tell them, and I'm not sure what their goal is for you being part of this committee or what the committee's goal and mission is. So those are things that we could talk about and then come up with, how you want to go about it or how your committee wants to go about it. But I'm definitely here to help. And I'm sure everyone here would love to be a part and to help you with that, because even I am constantly reaching out, right? Constantly reaching out and constantly reading books.
Thank you.
Cecil, is it Cecil?
It's actually Cicely.
Cicely, I'm sorry, Cicely.
That's okay. Yes, good morning. It is. Oh, good afternoon. I have to look because, now we're so global. I have to look at the time. So anyway, it's nice to have these conversations. And anyway, as I mentioned earlier in the chat, that I've also had that discrimination because, as you can hear, people will say, oh, you're not African American, so you don't count. And so these are years of indoctrination in regards to the whole process of why we feel this way towards others. Certainly not for me. Everybody to me matters, and Black lives do matter. And I tell people, look, when Black lives matter, all lives matter. You have to understand that, of course, lives matter, but Black lives have to matter for it all to be inclusive. So basically, it's years of indoctrination. And once the whole thing happens in George Floyd, I connect to my colleagues in the UK, and they decided to have a conversation, have a global conversation about it. And we've been doing it on a consistent basis because it's an ongoing dialogue that needs to happen. So there's that healing. And the healing to go beyond the self-hatred, as it was mentioned, that some people don't even want another Black person to be under them or to advocate for them, and it does happen. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. And so it's these things have to be undone. And as I said, we do have these conversations. It's a conversation of healing. So not to so much of the going into the depths of talking about, oh, this and that, because you won't move forward from there. Okay, so that's the story. So how do we move forward from that story? So how do we begin to connect with that story, but yet move forward? Because it's happened, so it's important for the healing process to happen. So to mention Jade, yes, Jade, I think that's good. And I have an organization called Inclusive Consortium, and we have many discussions, whether it be mindfulness or discussions about these kinds of things. And Jade, I'm going to finish now. I'm also I've been appointed as director for the United States for the International Youth Society. So Jade, I'd like to connect to you because I'd love to have you be a part of we're developing International Youth Society USA. And you and anybody here who has young people, we want to build 52 states we want to represent with the International Youth Society. So thank you, Tracy, and I appreciate you and United, I'm lost for words now. Thank you for putting this together and to have these kinds of conversations, but not to let it stop here. It needs to be an ongoing dialogue. So thank you.
So I couldn't agree with you more. It definitely needs to be an ongoing dialogue. So just quickly, I am going to, white privilege. It's unearned. It's born to benefit white people to receive from the American system, culture, and institutions. And if you are white, you can freely move around without fear. You can shop freely without fear. You can drive, walking, jogging, and breathe without fear. And it had nothing to do with the money you have. And so we're going to talk about racist versus anti-racism. Or anti-racist, sorry. This window keeps, I can't see it because it's not side by side. But anyway, so racist, one who is supporting a racist policy through their actions or inactions or expressions of racist ideas. So does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so now that we know what a racist is, why can't I move this? Okay. So anti-racist is one who is supporting an anti-racist policy through their actions or expressions, an anti-racist idea. An anti-racist idea is any idea that suggests that the racial group are equals in all their apparent differences, that there is nothing right or wrong with any racial group. Anti-racist ideas argue that the racist policies are the cause of racial inequalities or inequities. So I also want to share with you guys that an anti-racist is not someone who's quiet. Because you being quiet at that moment that you're seeing this, then you're saying it's okay to that person to continue to do what they're doing. And let's remember, an anti-racist, a racist policy has to be designed by a racist. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a racist policy. Going back to the original questions that we talked about, is there racism in America? Yes, there is. Is it hurting America? Absolutely. So the question you now have to ask yourself is, can you be an anti-racist? Can you say to those who are writing racist policies or following racist policies, can you say to them, and trust me, I don't want anyone going out there doing this on their own. You make sure you have allies with you. Don't want anyone losing their job or being threatened. You know what? Maybe we need to change that. And here's why. And you need to think it through, because people are just not going to believe it because you told them, right? That's the importance of history. And that's why I started this presentation with some of the original racist laws. Not necessarily, these weren't even policy. These were laws that they wrote. And if you look out through history, they were just on and on and on and on, right? The Lovings, a Black man and a white woman, they wanted, actually, I think they went to jail for a little while, but then they got out and they had to move to Pennsylvania, right? Because they were in Virginia. And these laws were everywhere, right? And those were the Jim Crow laws. I'm just going to check chat to see if anybody wants to share anything. Where is it? Here we go, chat. Okay, all right, okay, we're still going on. So I have this question up. Based on what you've heard so far. I'm all over the place, guys. Kind of got too many screens up. Bear with me. There we go. Hope I don't turn myself off. Okay, so with your thumbs up, ask yourself, can you be a racist and an anti-racist at the same time?
And this poll also asks the America question.
Okay. Oh, you got it in the poll?
Mhm.
Oh, cool. Okay. So guys, go, if you got the poll, answer the question. If you want to put comments, put it in the chat. I would love to hear you guys talk about this question, because it was a question that I was a part of a group and that was asked. And it was like, I don't know, can you be a racist and an anti-racist? That's really interesting. Ah, yeah. And how many words can you make out of the word America? And if anybody wants to type that in chat, I'd love to see what you came up with. Okay, so let's stop the poll and let's have a little talk. So some people posted, let's see, we got here, out of the 67 people who answered, 36 said yes, and 18% said no to the question of, can you be a racist and an anti-racist at the same time? So someone who answered yes, can one of you come off mute for me and tell me how you came up with the answer yes?
So I came up with yes, because I think people who are working to be an anti-racist don't necessarily understand and haven't necessarily really sat with their own biases. They don't necessarily understand their own culture, and they don't necessarily embrace their own culture. So in that sense, I myself can do everything in my power to be an anti-racist, but there may be some thoughts that are so deeply ingrained in me that they just kind of come out at different times. So I think somebody who is an anti-racist and working towards anti-racism, and their intention is to truly be an anti-racist, can still have some racist ideology that they've grown up with, that they may or may not be aware of.
I like that. Anybody else? I think, is that Mo? Mo, do you want to come off of mute and share with us?
Hi, I think I kind of agree somewhat with what Bob said. I think we can work and strive to be anti-racists. I think saying a racist might, I don't know if it's splitting hairs a little bit, but you can act in a way that could be racist without necessarily, I don't know, being a racist. That sounded horrible. That sounded very bad. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's
what I'm
okay.
saying is, like, you can act and you can strive and you can do what you can do to really hope to meet that ideal and to act in that way. but you know, again, as Bob said, I think there are some things that we may not even, and that's privilege coming in, notice or see or understand what we're doing, and we kind of go back into those, well, I don't see color, or I don't, you know, you're just my friend. But these are real things that I think we have to take a look at, and it's tough to parse it out. I think you can be both.
Thank you. I agree with you too. Anybody else who wants to share anything? Anybody who wants to share why they said no?
Oh, sorry. I wanted to share why I said yes.
Oh, please do.
I'm a person that always fought against racism, and I've been in a lot of groups, even as a child, as a teenager. And though you never really think about things like when you go to your own home, your own family, and you hear the comments about other races that you take for granted. You really don't even think that they're racist until you start really looking at it and saying, you know, this is like, I guess, systemic, because you're raised with these beliefs and you have to actually fight against them. You know, so you need to be able to explain to your own family as well that these are racist ideas that they're talking, and that they need to change their idealism, because if you didn't realize it on your own, then you're just part of the same problem. So I think that's why I said yes.
Okay, thank you. I agree. Anyone else want to share anything regarding that question?
I do.
Yes.
I didn't answer yes because I was like no, and then yesterday I was actually watching a segment where so tough conversation. The people that were at the Capitol riot were obviously white supremacists. Two of them that have been captured are actually married to women of African American descent. And you know, they have like the group, the white supremacist group, Proud Boys, I guess it's called, on like tattooed on their arm. And you know, you go on their pictures and they're married to African American women. So I was just so confused because I don't understand it, but I guess you can be. I was watching it and I was like, I don't understand. So it's just one of those things where it's like we're like in like a time where I feel like people just don't even know what they really believe, you know? Because if you're willing to marry a woman, provide for her, have a family with her, be with her, how could you go to a riot, you know, trying to give this ideology that you know, white people are superior? So it didn't make any sense to me. So that was my input. I said no, but then I was watching the segment yesterday and I was like, wait a minute, maybe I should share a little bit about that. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Maria. I've had some conversation around that. But before I answer, I think it's Nakisha. Did you have your hand raised?
Yes, I find that, you know, it's easy to discuss, well, it's not easy, but it's a little more understandable to discuss the anti-racism between the opposite races, right? What I find is more common in my circles now, and what I'm coming to understand is the racism within the race, and how a lot of the, you know, we are coming across the upper class and the division between the upper class and the lower class, as I would say, you know, in our communities, right, which we would consider the lower class. So when my shelter people cannot get their Chromebooks, right, because the kids are now learning from home, they were not able to get the Chromebooks. in the shelter. And we were calling the schools and telling them, our kids have not yet received their Chromebooks and they're trying to learn on phones, which are limited because they have an Obama phone, or they're using the parent's phone who has the old phones and things like that. But they're noticing that the other students in the upper Arlington area district or other area districts had already received theirs. We're or when we see, well, those are not my friends because they were considered less than this class of people. So, you think you bougie now, or you think you cute now, or you think you got, you all that now because you think you in Arlington district now, and that was the racism that they were receiving from their own class of people. So now it's hard for the divide. It's now hard because now they're not just experiencing the racism from the opposite race, they're now experiencing the racism within their own race. And how do you discuss that? How do you discuss that because it's not just about the skin color anymore, it has moved into something of class.
So, are you finished?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So that's when you get into the racial oppression. That's when the person of color has decided that they are going to assimilate or do their best to assimilate into the white man's society as best that they can, which means, which is what Maria was bringing up, that, oh, I'm going to be on the side of white people. And that's what's happening. That's it's not necessary. I wouldn't necessarily call it racism. What I call it is something that those people are trying to assimilate into the society that told them you got to make money and you got to be in the white world and you've got to adjust yourself to that. And that's what I see a lot of people of color. I met one young lady and she told me, she said, Tracy, I only like white men. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. You get to like whoever you like, as long as you're not putting down black men, right? You're not discriminating against black men. I don't care who you date, marry. Just don't be putting down people of color because of their color. You, as a black woman, cannot do that. Can you put him down because of his personality, because of his language? Fine. He's just not the one for you. I get that. But let's not go there because you are not white, right? So I hear you. I definitely hear you, and I could not agree with you more. You're right. I'm not sure if it's colorism there in your example. I would not, because I don't know those people's color, but I do know there is definitely colorism, and there definitely is anti-blackness, and that anti-blackness goes, people that are darker than you, people tend to put them down and treat them differently, even though if they were to go into the same store, they would be treated badly, but they don't see that because they want to put themselves on a pedestal. They want to be better than, and to be better than, the society has taught us, then you find a person of color to put down first.
You're absolutely right. You hit that on the head.
Yep. That's the first person you put down, is the person of color. Oh, you froze. Come back. Okay, you froze just a little. Maybe you'll come back. Was there somebody else who wanted to say something? I thought. Melissa, did you see anybody else who had something they wanted to talk? I thought there was somebody.
Was it Curtis?
I would like to say one last thing, and then I'll shut up forever. I find the term race to be part of the problem. The word was started to group people into identifiable groups, which automatically said they're different. And by acknowledging or not acknowledging, by forcing difference, we started to force negative attitudes towards one another. So I find, we don't have another term other than race and anti-race. I mean, racism and anti-racism, but the term race itself just really kind of, I think, is part of the problem. Enough.
No, you're right. It is part of the problem. And that's in the beginning of the presentation. I gave you the history of race and why it was brought in. It was so that they could make a difference, and it was easy to make the difference. So study the history of race, where it came from. 20 more minutes, you guys. We got 20 more minutes. So there was Janine, you wanted to add something? I thought you had unmuted for a minute.
Jeannie? No, I was just saying, I thought it was Curtis had something to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Curtis, are you gonna?
yeah, I was, thank you. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Can you hear me by any chance?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, okay, so I just want to make sure I got the question correct, because I don't want to answer the question wrong. So was the question, can you be a anti-racist, or can you be a racist and anti-racist at the same time? Was that the question, or? That was the question, right?
It is a trick question. Yep, it's a trick question.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure I read it right and processed it right. Okay, I think at a certain age, we're taught right and wrong. We're at a certain age where we're taught where we can actually read things, look things up. We're in like an extremely the highest information age that you possibly can get to right now. So you have the opportunity to get as much information on as much history as you possibly can. I had a conversation with someone that was white, and as I was listening to him, I had to stop them in the middle of the conversation because, I had told him it's so draining as a Black man. It's draining to have to continue to re-educate people about racism. And I believe that at some point in your life, you get taught whether racism is this and racism is that. But then there's a certain point in your life also where you have to be able to make that decision for yourself, which way you want to go, which way you want to stay. And I think a lot of times what happens is kind of like with the Republicans, and not to get political, some of the individuals in the Republican Party will say, well, you know what, let's not impeach Trump because we want to, bring the country together and not divide it or whatever. But you can't heal unless you address what's the elephant in the room. And I think a lot of times we run around the situations with race when we, and not to say anyone in the group or anything, when we immediately run the Black on Black crime, when we immediately run the we're doing these Black on Black things to ourselves. For me, you're going to be who you are when you're living around who you're living, so, but also you also have the opportunity to make a decision to say, this person did absolutely nothing to me. I don't have nothing against this person. And I believe it's a choice to either rather just be racist or not, because you can educate yourself to be racist or you can educate yourself to not. It's up to the person to choose whether they want to do that or not. That's just my opinion.
Curtis, you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. Jacqueline, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment really quickly. I think there's been so many different perspectives that have been shared, and I think it's so helpful. I think Bob spoke a lot on a lot of different issues that for anybody, when you think there's two different sides and like was said just now, you know, to be in a position where you're living it on a regular basis, it's your life, it's what you live. You're aware of your color or your cultural background all the time. It stands out. It's what distinguishes you, as Bob says, because it starts with the race. But I just want to kind of acknowledge those individuals that are Caucasian, who are actively seeking to educate and to make that change in the community. And I don't know that we say enough to those individuals who really are making a difference, because I know, as you said earlier, that I think a gentleman talked about how there was leadership that believed in educating African American men and helping them to meet the need of the organization. But then when that leadership changed, so did the program. So I just want to acknowledge those people who are in the field, who are actively educating their peers about racism, in regards to, you know, what injustices exist. And I just want to encourage those people that, you know, the people that are doing that, that we think, you know, from a cultural perspective, as a Latina, I thank you for doing that and for making a difference. I thank all the organizations for taking the time out to put these things in place, because you know it's the right thing to do, because you know that there is a such thing as white privilege, and that you're using your, you know, when they say like you have the card, you have the get in, you know, get in or get out of jail card or get in. But you're using your privilege to then open up opportunities for people to level the playing field. So I just want to say thank you to those people on this and in the community who are doing that on a regular basis.
So guys, because we're kind of running out of time, I just want to share, you know, how people can practice being anti-racist. And so, you know, how to be anti-racist. You have Angela Davis. It means hold yourself and others accountable. That's really important. It's really important holding people accountable. Just because you put a statement on a website, or just because you join an organization, or just because you read a book, if you're not holding yourself accountable, then you're going to fall back into those habits. It says keep up with social and political changes that affect target groups. That means reading books, looking at documentaries. I find documentaries very informative for us. You know, reading all the different books that are out there, and talking to people. Talking to people is very important. You're talking to a human, right? Attend workshops and conferences. Thank you all for attending this and having this conversation. I mean, that's the way we learn and share. We learn terms, how people interpret terms, and how things are going to go forward. And you build community. Believe it or not, we're all now part of a community that's learning something. And hopefully we'll get to do it again to find out where people are at and how far they have gone. So I wanted to share that. And her quote is, in a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist. You must be anti-racist. So look for this quote, print it out, post it in your desk at home, and always remember to look at it as you go through your day. And so striving to be an anti-racist is an ongoing journey. It is not a box that you can check. It's not something you can say, oh, we had this conversation with Tracy and it was 130 people and I'm good now, right? Or, oh, I read this book and I know everything and I'm good now. Because we know that even the best lawyers go back and pull out their law books and look things over to make sure they're doing it right. And so that's how we're going to have to get through this journey of becoming anti-racist and making America an anti-racist country. And no, we can't get rid of the word race yet because there's too many people who hasn't gotten it yet. But we're working on it, and all of us together are working on it. There's 130 people on this call, and I'm going to say that's a start. That's a big start, and that's the way that we go forward. And so this thing about stop saying I'm not a racist, yeah. So I know a lot of people, that's the first thing they say, I'm not a racist. It's like, okay, then what are you? I'm an anti-racist. I am striving to be an anti-racist. And if you say or do something that, you know, don't take someone questioning you about it as a negative, you know, take it as an opportunity to learn. And that's what I would share, you know, when you're talking to people. And so, Melissa, I'm at the end. Should we take some more questions? Do we have some? Now, somebody put in, there was a book, there's a book called Cast. I haven't read the book yet. I plan to. I heard it's a really good book.
Tracy, can I give you a comment?
Yes, Malcolm, you want to say something?
Yeah, I love these conversations, so much appreciate them. And at Osborne, we've been having this conversation for a few years now. You know, I'm a Black man. My grandparents are those people you spoke about. My grandfather was white, my grandmother was Black, you know, and we lived in Harlem. I remember when my grandfather was the only white man in Harlem, you know, worked in the post office on 35th Street for 50 years, you know, so I was raised, my aunts and uncles are light skinned, you know, so for me, I bring this up because yes, I was always taught that because of people's ignorance that I'm gonna have to work harder because of the stereotypes. And through trials and tribulations, even today, I fast forward at 48 years old, double master's degrees, you know, very educated. I am in position at my organization of hiring people. My office in Newburgh is primarily staffed with white women, not because it just worked out that way. I teach my three boys, you know, not to see color, treat people fairly. We all have opinions on this. You know, working in the prison system for 20 years, I was told a couple days before Christmas, it was behind my back by a white officer. I don't know which one it was, but I was called a inmate nigger lover. And it was those three words that crushed me after all of these years of just the word nigger being associated with the work that we do for individuals incarcerated. And I had to make a split decision. And I bring this up because of the Angela Davis quotes. And sure, we got to speak up against things. And I get that. At that moment, I had to make a decision. Do I turn around and address this, or do I live for another day? And I tell you, I chose to live for another day for a lot of reasons. Safety, you know, I need to get back to my family and I'll process this and deal with this. But at that moment, it was not the time for me to address it. That was my personal opinion. And I tell you, some people, you know, feel that I didn't handle it correctly. I was supposed to turn around and I was supposed to, you know, really just express how I really felt. And I chose not to. And I'm saying these things because even though my grandfather was a white man, I know racism still exists. I am not naive, and I've raised my sons not to be naive. And I think in organizations, these such conversations need to continue. Uh, there's words that make me feel uncomfortable. People of color. I am a black man, and it's not to be offensive to nobody. Those things just don't sit well with me. I am a black man. Why do I have to have, and I know it's politically correct when we have the terminologies. But my mother and father were Black Panthers. They told me I was a black man. You're gonna be the next Malcolm X, and now I'm a people of color. And to the African American male, woman, if we do have to work harder, then so be it. Be that person. Get educated. Go to school. And be competitive. I sit on boards. I hire people. I'm able to make decisions today, and that's not bragging, but I worked for that. So I believe as a people, we can strive to do whatever we want to do. Maybe we have to work a little harder, but it is possible. And to those who struggling with it, I say don't give up. Keep fighting, keep searching for answers. And at the end, God bless everybody. I thank United Way for this here, and you, Tracy, for putting this on. I'm happy I was able to get on here. And I just appreciate everybody who's standing up for right. So thank you.
This is Jeannie. Tracy, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for participating. This was a wonderful discussion and it needs to continue. These are tough discussions and sometimes it'll make people feel uncomfortable, but there are conversations we absolutely need to have. So I want to thank you very much. I do have to jump off to go to another meeting, another Zoom meeting. But Melissa, I think you're good for the next session, right? Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon. Enjoy the next session as well. Bye.
So guys, I don't see any more questions. So, and anyone else with their hand up, I'm going to thank all of you for participating and the back and forth conversation. I put my contact information in the email. The presentation was only good because all of you participated. So remember that. Remember that your participation in any presentation that is given, especially if the presenter is asking for input, it's to get that dialogue back and forth. And I really do feel like, Melissa, if you want, I could do this on a monthly basis and we could just hear people's stories, because sometimes that is what people need to do in order to heal, is to tell their stories. And I'm more than welcome to set that up and be a part of that. Thank you so much, everybody. Please remember that being an anti-racist and undoing racism is something that you're going to have to practice and do every day. Every day you're going to have to do it. I know it's hard sometimes to call it out when you see it. I understood exactly where Jeffrey was coming from. I've been in that situation. You can't always do it then. And trust me, the frustration and the stress that you go home wanting to know that, saying to yourself, I should have done this and I should have done that. We've all been there. But I would just say racism is like a drug. It's a drug that we have to admit is there, and then we have to do what it needs to take to get rid of it. And that feeling will always come back, but you have to fight it off. And you have to find all the things that are available to you to undo it. Curtis did tell us that you can educate yourself now. You could go to book readings. You could do it with your family, with your friends, by yourself. Call me. It's like just so many other things that you can do to educate yourself and to move forward. So again, thank you, everybody. This was great. Melissa, thanks for inviting me to do this. I put my contact information in there and you guys can just reach out to me anytime.
Thank you, Tracy. That was
Thank you.
Incredible, so impactful. I learned so much. Our organization, we're we're trying to do the work, and we're just so appreciative of you coming today and presenting to so many nonprofits in our community that are working so hard every day to help all the families. And this was just such an important discussion. And like Tracy said, I just really appreciate all of you being so comfortable sharing experiences, sharing your comments. It really just made it you know, such a great dialogue. And I definitely want to continue the dialogue, like Tracy said, so we'll talk offline about what that looks like. So thank you so much. I really, really, truly appreciate it. I'm going to give everyone a 5-minute break, and then we're going to go into our United Way meeting. So I will see you back in 5 minutes. Thank you again, Tracy.
Very good.